Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. Today I want to talk to you about Masterpiece Transformers and their impact on the collecting market. Now, this is going to be from my perspective, how it has impacted me and things that I have seen. So, of course, in the comments down below, I'd like to hear what you think about this topic, but I also want to get your input on next week's video. Although I've talked about it before, I've given my point of view on what I think needs to get reissued, but I've been in this game collecting since the beginning of Masterpiece, so a lot of things that I think need to get reissued are probably not the same priorities you have. So put it in the comments below. So next week I'm going to put a viewer's point of view of what should get reissued by what company, the Masterpiece. But let's go ahead and get talking about the impact Masterpiece has on collecting coming up. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to Masterpiece Transformers is the fact that when this started, was it 02, 03, around that time frame, somewhere around that time frame, I remember looking for G1S Transformers, and all I would find would be some other things that they got working on, like Armada. Now I'm gonna try to line the picture up just right, because truthfully, I've got a bunch of pictures of Armada and some of these other eras, and I don't really know 100% which one's which, but this stuff comes out, and I was looking for G1. I wanted either modern iterations of G1 or just G1 figures themselves. But I knew in my heart of hearts I'd like to see these modern engineering, modern figures made with G1 in mind to look like G1 characters. But before Masterpiece was around, this is the only kind of stuff that we would get. For the most part, during these eras, I completely tapped out of collecting and buying these. I did not collect these. I did not buy these. I picked some of them up at garage sales for like a dime to give to my kids to play with so they don't break something that I have that's actually got a little bit of value to it. And I'm not knocking these eras. I don't have anything against them. And in fact, I appreciate them a lot more now looking back on them. But during a time, if you're looking for something you want, but you can never ever find it, it becomes very frustrating. When finally Takara comes out with their MPO1, and then that just opens the floodgates to all of these other figures, I was excited to see a G1 representation of the characters that I loved. And for that, I was into it, but I wasn't as deep into it as pre-order them and order them from other countries, import them. There was a lot of stuff going on in the early days. It was a little harder to get your hands on, and we're going to get into some of the pricing of this stuff. But with that, I was into getting the Toys R Us version, so I would see what was coming out in Japan, and I would wait till it came out at Toys R Us and get it, and I was so excited when it'd come in, and of course I'd see the differences and stuff. But getting G1 characters was a lot of fun. So that really rolls from my first point of finally getting to collect G1 again, which is what I really wanted to do with Transformers, and not all these other iterations, not the Beast Wars and not the Cybertron trilogy, any of that kind of stuff. I wanted G1, and they were putting about a figure or two out a year, so it was really slow going, but it was exciting, but it was really expensive. And so if you were to get the actual Takara versions that you'd have to import from Japan, you'd be paying a lot of times $200. Now, maybe the places I was getting them from or watching where to get them from, it was more expensive and there were cheaper places. I didn't know about Shozi at the time because Shozi didn't exist at the time. And there were not any other options that I saw that you could get them cheaper. And I actually never even knew about KOs in the early days. See, in the early days, I didn't know KOs existed. And even though some were getting made, I was just looking for the cheapest option, and really the cheapest option was Toys R Us, Walmart, and all of those places that were putting out exclusives. Now, I know it doesn't have a direct correlation. It doesn't have a direct relationship with Star Wars or G.I. Joe or Marvel Legends or any of that kind of stuff. But I do kind of feel like there was a line drawn somewhere in there where companies felt like they could charge more if they gave you a bigger and better figure. Kind of like what I was seeing with Masterpiece. So in my mind, when I saw Star Wars Black Series come out, I associated that with, okay, well, that's like buying a Masterpiece figure. And maybe I don't want to collect Masterpiece Star Wars. I want to collect standard toy Star Wars. There's regular Star Wars. I like it the way it was back in the day. I did not dive into this line right away. But I think a lot of people that were in Masterpiece Transformers that also like Star Wars jumped on this right away. It jumped on this bandwagon. And maybe it was a Marvel Legends thing. Marvel Legends was at the 6-inch scale there too. But I do believe there is some level of impact that the Transformers Masterpiece community made on the rest of the collecting community when you see the fact that you have this price point over $100. So something like this that would be a premium figure for $20 sounds like a good deal. And I really also think that Masterpiece Transformers, showing that there's a huge, massive market for G1, had a bit of an influence on a decision to start Classics. Now, that is my feeling. That's my gut feeling, because I felt like when Classics came out, the only other option was Masterpiece. Either $100, $200 Masterpiece figures, or these, and people say they were 10 or 11 bucks. I know I bought mine for $7 at my Walmart. So I don't know if when I picked them up in 07, they were on clearance. Because I'm looking at the information now and it says 06 is when they came out. But I clearly remember buying these when the live action movie was in theaters. So maybe I was buying them on clearance. I don't know. But I got these and I was excited to get more G1 product on the shelves. Well, G1 sorta, G1 adjacent, semi G1, but it was good enough. It was the best thing that we've seen since the 80s, and I was pretty excited about this. But I think that the massive interest in Masterpiece did sort of sway Hasbro into this. Or maybe I'm completely wrong. So the next thing that I really feel like Masterpiece Transformers have a huge impact on the rest of the collecting world by having such a strong third-party company base. Now there's two groups of third-party. There's the unlicensed Fans Toys, X Transbots, MMC, Gigapower, and all of them. Deformation Space. And then there's the other group of licensed ones, such as 3-0, Flame Toys, and all of those other companies that are currently licensing out the license to make these figures. I do want to point out something. When you look at licensed and you look at unlicensed, the unlicensed figures are the only ones that transform, aside from Robosen. And then the ones that are licensed cost a ton of money. They're very expensive. They're even more, in most cases, more expensive than the transforming ones like Fans Toys, X Transbots, and all of them. But they don't transform. And it's because I think Hasbro wants to hold the transforming gimmick to themselves. And so they only license out non-transforming versions, which a lot of time people think that's just them being lazy. They're not being lazy. They're trying to make up for the lack of transforming Transformers by extra detail and paint apps and more other functionality, which it should be. But starting to see more and more third party in other areas because Transformers, Masterpiece Transformers, and other licensees are making so many amazing figures, and they're so popular and they sell so well. Not only that, but they sell well in the secondary market too. The next thing I want to say is, what is the impact that we have in the Masterpiece Transformers community with KOs, knockoffs? There is always the debate of knockoff versus is it good, is it bad, is KO okay, is it not okay? And I personally never have had a problem with knockoffs, ever. I buy them, I compare them to the original side by side. I just think that there's so many good points to it. It brings collectors in. You could try it out. Knockoffs in Transformers are usually as good a quality nowadays as the official, and sometimes even better. And I'm about to find out by reviewing this Trailbreaker pretty soon if it's as good, if not better, than the original. But I gotta say that there's a huge fan base of Masterpiece Transformers collectors that support the knockoffs, and then of course we see knockoffs in other franchises. Maybe because of this, but I gotta say, knockoffs aren't going anywhere, but they've changed. It is a different world than it was. So we look at this Boba Fett. Now, you might think it's funny because you literally have 12 Black Series, Star Wars Masterpiece, Black Series versions of Star Wars Boba Fett to pick from. It's almost irritating. You can throw a rock and hit 6 Boba Fetts nowadays. But back then, he was really hard to get. He was on the shelves. People act like they didn't want to buy him. He was on the shelves. He's not on the shelves anymore. People were going crazy because they couldn't find one. And so knockoffs popped up. And for a while there, the knockoff market was huge for Star Wars. It might still be, but the fact that Black Series is kind of failing as a line, I don't know if it's worth knocking off anything these days. But as a whole, I think Masterpiece Transformers has impacted other KOs, if not emboldened other companies to knock off official product. And then before I get into my last point, I've already talked about the price point, but other companies nowadays are making $100 figures. I never spent $100 on a single figure, not even a vintage figure, at the point of time when I started collecting Masterpiece. And even my first Masterpiece figure, my first 6 Masterpiece figures were sub 100, but the line itself was so good that I eventually got into spending $100 figures, $100 per figure, $200 and more on these figures because they're so great, and it drove me to it. Nowadays, you see people spending $130 on 6-inch figures with Mezco, and SH Figuarts is not quite there at that expensive price point. But you see this stuff opening up, people getting used to spending that kind of money on Masterpiece Transformers, or at least seeing other people spend money on Masterpiece Transformers does have some sort of an impact. The last impact that I want to say that Masterpiece Transformers has on the rest of the collecting community is Hasbro themselves. Now, it's kind of not really Hasbro's Takara's engineering. Takara is the creator of Masterpiece, so for them to make the mainline toys nowadays is actually quite brilliant, that it is influencing those toy lines to be more Masterpiece-ish. The gap is narrowing, but not narrowing as fast as I thought it would. It seemed like in some cases we are taking steps forward, like with this guy right here, and in some cases we take a few steps back. But with that, we see the engineering impact in the mainline. I don't have to go too deep into this, but leader figures at $55 aren't really leader figures, they're Voyager figures with increased amount of engineering, increased part counts and extra part counts, or like the Starscream is just a Voyager figure packed with a couple accessories. So with that, the impact we see on the main line and making these figures better, closer to Masterpiece-ish, is actually something that is an impact from Masterpiece Transformers. Obviously, impact from Masterpiece Transformers because the company that makes Masterpiece is making them. But when this Hot Rod came out, everybody said it's a mini Masterpiece. And I have to agree, it is really close. And I also have to agree that I like this figure better than what Takara made. I think it looks more like the figure in the movie, in the Transformers 1986 movie, the character, than what Takara made for their, and I don't know, was it MP45? What number is the Hot Rod? I don't know off the top of my head. I don't care either, but I do want to say that I did not like the one Takara put out. I thought the shape was off. And although this one is better in some areas, the other one has a few, like a cleaner lower leg, is basically the only thing the other one really has on the one that was released for the Studio series. I do want to say I think this is Takara trying to right one of their wrongs, and I bet you if you ask Takara which figures they like the least, this one would be on their list because it just doesn't look right in the mod form. The alt mode, I do think the Masterpiece alt mode is better than the Studio Series alt mode, but you have to admit that the Masterpiece influence is on that figure and a whole lot of other figures that are on the shelf right now. So these are my takes on what's affected by Masterpiece Transformers, but I'm curious if you've thought about this. What do you think Masterpiece Transformers has affected in the collecting community? And do you think I'm completely way off? I'm okay with it. I'm okay if you disagree with me 100%, or if you agree with me 40% is perfectly fine. But don't forget to put in the comments below who you think should get reissued. What figure from what company specifically would you like to see reissued? It would be a lot of fun, and hopefully Fans Toys X Transbots and them are watching. Tiberium Hanger, out.